Glenn, do you recall the very first piece of land that the Land Trust acquired or purchased?
I do. It was a property north of Camas, Washington, that had a wonderful couple, Bernice and Alan Johnson. And it was just 40 acres that they had cows on it, and they said that they wanted to turn it into a wildlife sanctuary. And they ended up, we helped them get some grants, and they took some streams that had been ditched and drained and set off to the side, and they rerouted it right in a natural course through the property and created a pond and planted thousands of trees that came back, and they named it Enchanted Acres.
Oh, yeah.
And they were later named the Wildlife Farmers of the Year, and we entered into a perpetual agreement with them that is going to keep it in that condition.
Well, I don't want to really get too into this, but it is something I think is worth mentioning. You talk about land, and then your land is sometimes next to government land, and all of the politics that usually are swirl around land and development. How do you guys stay somewhat neutral on that?
Well, what we've said from the start is that we believe Northwesterners, Oregonians and Washingtonians love our place. And that is a value that every Oregonian, Washingtonian shares, and every Northwesterner shares. If you're Republican, if you're Democrat, the value, and there's a pride, it's part of our personality, I think, that we're from this place. And we just decided from the start that that's what we're going to appeal to. And we've just, as an organization, we don't file lawsuits. We don't tell anyone what they should or shouldn't do. If there's someone who says they don't want to work with us, and we don't work with them. We only work with people who want to do this. So in that way, I think we've tended to allow people to feel they have the space to tell their own story, and it doesn't feel threatening to them, and it's been able to attract support from the most conservative landowners that you might imagine to those that are very liberal on the political spectrum, and they know that we're just going to do this one thing, which is save their beautiful place.
Yeah. Well, how do you guys support yourselves? I mean, how is it that there's a staff? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, it's just been so much fun because I was one of the founders, and I made a contribution early on, and it's nothing but people making contributions.
Really?
This is a group that's made up of all of the people that live here, and we now have thousands of people that every year make a contribution, and that is what makes it all go round. We write grants and do other things that help bring the land into conservation. We raise nearly $20 for every $1 that's donated to us through all of our leveraging and donations and other things. So the individual contribution, is fundamental to our work. $25, $50 is redoubled again and again and again towards conserving these great places.
So then that's how you are able to buy some of these properties as well?
Most of the buying comes from writing grants to private foundations. For instance, Paul Allen, Microsoft owner and owner of the Trailblazers, has given us more than $2 million to acquire key properties in the gorge and out at the coast. And so a lot of the land purchasing comes from larger foundations and gifts from individuals. But it's the power of the individual donor, our members, that puts us in the office to write those grants and build those relationships with the foundations and grantors.
Do you know how much is actually purchased land versus land that's been
on a per
donated?
Acre basis? It's probably 70% purchased land and 30% donated, something like that.
Really? Mm-hmm. So once the land then, and we talked a little bit in the first segment about how the land just kind of stays as much as possible the way that you either got it when you bought it, or how will it stay that way into the future?
Fabulous question. It was right from the start we realized anybody that has a backyard, that nature can have a way of going out of control pretty fast if you're not out there cutting the grass or doing whatever maintenance you need to. And 18,000 acres now, that's a lot of backyard to be cutting. And so we decided that we're going to build an endowment, a fund that we will grow over time, that we will grow it large enough that just the interest from that fund will allow and provide for us to take care of all of these properties responsibly. So we now have more than $3 million that has been set aside that we'll just draw on the interest from that to help us take care of these properties. In addition, we've built a volunteer steward program where we have a lot of the neighbors of these places that we've conserved are some of the biggest advocates and proponents for keeping it that way and being responsible caretakers of it. So we train them in things to look for and how to walk the boundaries of the property, and they pick up trash, and they help bring school kids or other people out to enjoy and appreciate the property too. So with teams of volunteers, funds set aside to help us where there's an actual financial need, that's how we've really been able to assure that this will continue to go forward.
Fascinating. Mm-hmm. So can people, say myself, mm-hmm. can I find out where these properties are and visit them, utilize them in any way, or are they sort of protected? How is that aspect?
Yeah, we're working on that right now. We've been so focused on conserving these places that we don't yet have a really good tool on our webpage or a book or something like that. But there absolutely are some places that public is going to right now that they can enjoy, with a long area along the Klickitat River and Mosier Waterfall Park that a lot of people, probably your viewers, some of them have been there. And so there's places that people are already going to. Look for us in the next year or two that we'll have more on our webpage that describes particular places that people can go. Generally, when we acquire these places or they're donated to us, we allow the traditional uses of the property to continue to occur. So fishing and hunting and bird watching and things like that can still occur on our properties.
Great. Well, we did touch a little bit on the future of what you guys are doing, but I want to spend a little more time on that when we come back. So take another quick break and we'll be right back.
Still to come.
The Columbia Gorge National Scenic Area is an area that the United States government has recognized has national caliber scenic qualities and should have additional land use regulations and other programs in support of that. And it's a very narrow sliver just along the Columbia River through the gorge.